Hi, and welcome to the next episode of my Intrepid 4x5 journey. And for this one, I thought I'd do something slightly different. So what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to try and piece together everything that I've described so far, and just show you how I created this photo down here, or maybe it's down here, or wherever I put it on the screen. It'll be somewhere on the screen at the moment, just so you know what I'm aiming for. It's an indoor photo. I normally do landscapes, so Kim has very kindly lent me the use of her studio, and as you'll see once we get moving with this, she's in the process of just setting the scene for a sort of Alice in Wonderland themed photo shoot that she's going to be doing later. So let's get on with it. Okay, just a little bit about the setup here, just so you understand what sort of I'm trying to achieve in the lighting setup. On this side we have a Lupolux Fresnel light, which currently is illuminating me, along with a Bowen's continuous light on this side, so we've got lights from both sides. When I actually take the photograph on the camera, I'm just going to use the Lupolux heading off in that direction, just lighting up the subject. As you can see, as you saw from the picture, the subject is just the toys on the chair behind me, with the mirror as well. I was intending to use flash for this and actually just go through it using flash, but what I've discovered, because it would have been the first time I'd actually tried to use flash on this camera, or at least with this lens, is that I have to have a PC sync port on this lens, but we've tried it and it won't trigger our lights. Well, it's Kim's lights, I should say. There's me trying to claim Kim's lights, but actually Kim's lights, not my lights. But yeah, it won't trigger them. So I don't know whether it's a fault with the sync port on this particular shutter or not, but for some reason it won't work. So we're going for continuous lights. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you through the process of, obviously I'll bring in pieces of gear, set them up, show you how I'm using them, explain what I'm doing with them, and just walk you through the whole process of setting the camera up, how I go about focusing, how I go about metering, just to make sure that we get the right exposure and that sort of thing. Okay, so I guess the first thing to do is go and get my tripod and place it roughly where I think we're going to be shooting from. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I've brought the tripod in, and I've placed it roughly where I think I'll need to be shooting from, so I'm trying to shoot along. I've got my 90mm lens, which is still the only lens that I've got, so it's quite a wide angle, so I'm having a bit of a guess that this is about the right position, but I may need to move backwards or forwards depending on what I actually see through the viewfinder once I get set up. So the first thing I need to do is put my camera on the tripod. Just pop it under there, just tighten that up. Okay, it's nice and stable. And then we'll just open the camera up. And hopefully you can still see this. But now, what I just need to do is screw this in. Oops. Just attach the front standard to the. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put it in the front hole here, because I'm not very far from my subject, so I suspect I'll need to bring the bellows right in to focus properly. So I'm going to make a guess that's the best starting point. But as I think I mentioned in a previous video, what you might find the easiest thing to do is to actually ratchet the focusing plate out a little bit before you try and attach it. Admittedly, I'm still not very good at getting the screw into there, but just put that down for a second and move the. Just turn this towards me a little bit. Oops. What I'm just doing, I'm just raising the standard up into its normal fixed position, really just to get out of the way, so that I can get easy access to that. So I'll just get off my stool for a second there. and I'll just tilt this down. Where am I? I'll just tilt this down, so hopefully you can see better what I'm doing, although it's probably going to make it even more awkward for me, so but just bear with me, and just basically screw that in. So there's a little notch in the wood here, and you just screw along there. Actually it went in first time. Okay, that's very unusual for me. And there's some marks on here, and I just want to get that nicely lined up. Now I did see a video, I think it was Ben Horn actually, on his channel. If I can find the video, I'll put a link to it anyway. But he was suggesting, because you can see even though that's tight, I can still move that. He came up with an idea about how to make that put a bit more friction in there, which was basically just wrapping some tape around. But I'll put a link to his video, as I said, and you can just have a watch and see what he came up with, which I think is quite a neat idea. So that's now fixed in place, and the next job is to put my lens on. Okay, so as I said, need to put the lens on. So here's my 90mm lens. First thing to do, take that off, because I've put that on several times with that on there. I wonder why on earth I couldn't see anything through the viewfinder. So just take that off, and then just pop this into the sort of space here. So there's a piece of metal here, and you basically just attach that slightly behind that, and then here's another piece of metal, and you just lift that up, and then that should just fit in there, and then just push those back down again, and that's it. That's nice and solid, that's in place. And then take that off when we're ready to shoot. Although actually before I do that, what I'll do is I'll just put my cable release into position as well. So if I just loosen that up a little bit so I can just turn that. So hopefully you can see the cable release just pops into there. So I'll just turn that in there, so that's nicely in there. As you can see, I'm still using my long cable release that I bought several years ago. I've thought about just getting short ones. You can get short ones that are that sort of size. Much more convenient for this sort of style of camera, because you don't end up having to wrap it around things or just try and get it out of the way when you sort of doing maybe a long exposure, or even if you just left the camera so it's not wandering about in the wind. Okay, so currently got the lens on, got everything set up. So the next thing to do is to get my dark cloth, get my loop so I can do some focusing, get my glasses so I can actually see the rear screen. So, oops. Okay, right, so that's something to watch for. As you probably noticed there, as I turned the camera using this, it actually just rotated it on the plate. So I've not had that problem before, so I obviously didn't tighten that in enough before we started. So I'll just use the bottom of the tripod to do that. What I'll just do, so what I was saying is that I'm using my glasses so I can see this, but obviously with the dark cloth on, so that's the next step. Okay, as I said, I'm going to use my dark cloth, which I'm going to put on in a second, to basically compose a scene and focus. But I'll just show you the process without the cloth on to start with, just so you can see what I'm actually doing. So the first job is to basically make sure that the scene's reasonably composed. So what we need to do, and I suspect, I've not had a lot of experience with different lenses, but I would imagine that they all have a similar sort of concept. Lens cap off, which I'm sure is a similar concept on all of them. But on mine, I have a little switch here, and by pushing that switch up, it basically opens the shutter, so I can just let light straight through. I've not got any film in this, obviously, so there's no danger of exposing anything. So now I've got that open fully, I also want to make sure that I'm on the maximum aperture, so my aperture control is there. So just make that as open as possible. And that way I've got the maximum amount of light possible being projected onto here, which is where I'm going to try and focus and compose. So when I've got the dark cloth over, I just need to be a reasonable distance away from this so I can actually focus properly on it myself. And then basically I'm just going to compose, use this, use this to, so this one locks actually on the other side. I can move that in and out to focus. Once I'm happy that I'm reasonably well composed and I'm reasonably well focused, I'm not going to try any movements on this one, so I'm not going to be moving the standards about. Just to keep everything upright. But once I'm reasonably happy that I've got things in reasonable focus, I'm then going to use my loop, which just basically placed against there, and then I can do the critical focusing, just make sure everything's tack sharp. Then once I'm happy, what I'll do, take the, and obviously all that's with the dark cloth on as I said, then once I've got everything set up, lock everything down, make sure nothing's going to move, and then put the film in and take the photograph. So the next step is obviously put this on. So I'm still using the dark cloth that Kim made me. Just really convenient because you just pop it over like that, and then once I'm ready, I can just pop it over like that, and I can basically tighten it up as need be. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, so as you can probably tell, I've changed positions here and I got myself tangled up. So I've changed positions, so I'm a bit lower down. I've had to come back a little bit. And also change the orientation of the camera. So I just need to make sure everything's locked down now. So I don't want anything to change now, so make sure my tripod's all locked down, everything's locked down. And that's that. So so I'm happy with that composition. I can actually see, looking at it, that it's actually a little bit tilted. But it certainly didn't look tilted. Through the viewfinder it actually looked okay, so hopefully that'll be fine when we take the picture, but we'll see. So the next thing to do is just to work out the correct exposure. So what we're probably going to do, or what we are going to do now, is we're going to change the lights round. So the lighting in here is not going to be probably ideal for video, because what I want to do to actually meter, I need to switch one of the video lights off. And also change the orientation of this this Fresnel light behind me, so that it's set ready for the image. And what I want to do, I want a fairly directional light falling on the subject, so you get plenty of light fall off. So it's almost like the light's created a bit of a vignette as well. So that's what I'll try and do next. So to meter the scene, I've come over to where the subject is, and I use my Sekonic light meter. I can't remember whether I said this in a previous video or not, but I don't always use the light meter. I quite often have a camera with me anyway, a digital camera, and I'll quite often meter using that, or maybe using my phone as well. So I've got light meter apps on my phone. But in this case I'm going to use my Sekonic meter, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the incident meter. So basically what I'm trying to achieve is I'm going to put this in a second right in front of my main subject, which is the rabbit, and just measure how much light is falling on the rabbit itself from that Fresnel light, which is over in that direction there. So the way these meters work, you can basically change the, I don't know if you can see that, but effectively got this set so that as I toggle this little wheel here, it's going to change the aperture and tell me what the time setting is. So I may as well set it to the aperture that I intend to use, which is f32. so I want a reasonable depth of field here. So I'll just pop this down in front of my subject. Try not to block any of the light out myself. Meter the subject, and this is telling me at f32 I need a 2-second exposure. So in this case, that's what I'm going to go with. So the next thing to do is put the film holder into the back of the camera, and I think, as I mentioned before, the way my convention is, black means it's unexposed. So this slide and that one, as it happens, are both black, and as you can see, hopefully as well, the little wires are over to protect the slide so that they can't come out accidentally. What I'm going to do, because this is the camera's actually in landscape orientation at the moment, I'm going to slide the dark slides in that way, and what you'll hear is I push it through. I'll just jiggle it a little bit probably, and you should hear it click into place, and then that's secure. So basically, and I know you probably can't see because I've got my hand in front, but you just basically pull that up. These elastic bands are holding it in place, and then slide along. And obviously this is one of the reasons why you need to make sure everything's locked down, because as you're sliding it along, it's obviously jigging the camera a little bit. So I just need to lift that slightly just to get it over the lip, and there you go. That just clicked into place there. So that's now in place, and it's held firmly against the sorry, this is holding the dark slide firmly against the back of the camera. Now, one thing you do need to make sure you do before you slide the slide out is, because when we were focusing this camera, we had the iris completely open to focus. So what you need to do is make sure you close that before you pull the slide out, because I have to admit I have I've not done that before, and ended up with a ruined piece of film. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll take the photograph. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. What I'll do is also obviously set to f32 and because I don't have 2 seconds as an automated exposure on my lens, I'm basically going to time the 2 seconds and use the bulb feature of the lens, the shutter, to take the photograph, and that's what I'll do next. So, as I said, first thing to do is to close the iris so that we're not letting light in. So that little switch there for me does that. And then I said we're going to use f32, so we'll just move the aperture into f32, which is there. And we need a 2 second shutter, so I'll need to do that on bulb, so I'll just move that round to bulb, which is there. And I still got the film covered, so I'm just going to do a test shot, make sure that everything's working okay. Oops. So what I'll do is I'll just cock the shutter, and then this is actually this, hopefully you can see this, but use my shutter release 1 and 2, and there we go, that's working okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the slide out so the film can be exposed, cock the shutter again, and then we'll take the photograph. Okay, so I'm now crouched down behind the camera. I'm trying to get out of the light, which is directly behind me. We are casting a little bit of a shadow from the camera, but I think I'll live with that. Hopefully that'll look okay in the photograph. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the slide out, cock the shutter, take the picture. So just move the wire out of the way, and obviously it's the front one, the one that's facing forward, that I need to take out. So just take that out, and you don't need to take it all the way out. I mean, I tend to, and then I'll just pop it back in. very slightly like that. Obviously, if it's a windy day, you wouldn't be doing that sort of thing. You'd be holding on to that. And now I just need to cock the shutter, and then obviously get down low. And I'm going to just to expose the film. So here we go. 1 elephant, 2 elephant, and that's my 2-second exposure. And pop this back in, lock it down, and that's it. I'm done. As you probably spotted, if I just take this out for a second. So for me, this side I can still use, but this side is now white, which means that I've exposed that, and I can't use that that side of the film again. So I need to get that one exposed, get that one developed. Okay, well that's it. Taking the photograph. Probably I should mention a couple of things about that last scene where I was actually taking the photo. Because what I said was that when you took the slide out, you don't necessarily take it out all the way. Obviously, if you are going to take this sort of approach where you're going to swap the slides round so you know which one's been exposed, then you do need to take it out fully and put it back. So sorry if I caused a bit of confusion there. And also, when I was exposing the image, I did 1 elephant, 2 elephants as my 2 seconds. Not very accurate, I accept, but I'm just relying on the fact that film is very forgiving for overexposure compared to digital. So by just doing it that way, I probably did it for more like 2.5 seconds, I suspect, rather than 2 seconds. So there's a very slight overexposure there, but I'm sure the film will be able to cope with that. But we'll see what happens when I get that film developed. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found it useful. And thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.